Have you ever noticed that the people who transform the most never feel the need to announce their change? It's fascinating. Some rush to tell everyone about their new phase, as if transformation were a trophy to display. But the ones who truly manage to reorder their lives, the ones who take a deep step inward, almost always do it in silence. They don't crave the spotlight of social media. They don't need applause because they understand something fundamental. Real transformation never happens on the stage. It happens behind the curtains of the soul. True change is not a performance. It is an intimate plunge, often a painful one. And in that plunge, we don't face what others can see. We face what we've hidden, sometimes even from ourselves. The wounds we've denied, the fears we've silenced, the desires we've repressed. All of it continues to shape every choice, every relationship, every failure, and every victory in our lives. This isn't about productivity. It's not about making lists, forcing a smile, or checking boxes on a planner. This is about the inner chaos. And when that chaos is ignored, it spills outward, shaping the external world into the same disorder. It sabotages your plans, traps you in repeated cycles, and leaves you frustrated, asking yourself why nothing ever changes. Maybe you've lived this before. You started a new habit, a diet, a workout routine. At first it seemed promising, but soon the motivation faded, the enthusiasm died, and you slipped back into the same old patterns. Why? Because change that begins only on the surface always cracks. Carl Jung taught us something vital. Real transformation doesn't begin outside. It begins with an honest confrontation with your shadow. The shadow is everything you don't want to admit exists in you, the feelings you reject, the behaviors you condemn in others but secretly carry within yourself. Many see it as an enemy, but it isn't. It's the path, because only when you recognize your shadow do you become whole. Think about it. How many times have you told someone about your plans before even taking the first step? How many times have you declared with excitement that you were about to change, only to abandon everything shortly after? That happens because the moment you speak, you already receive a dose of approval. You already feel the relief of being praised without actually doing the work. The brain is tricked. It believes the journey is complete before it even begins. It's like laughing at a joke before the punchline. You lose the impact. That's why real change is born in silence. It doesn't need hashtags, quotes, or witnesses. Transformation is a secret pact between you and your soul. It requires time, depth, and maturity. When you commit to change without announcing it to the world, your motivation is no longer about pleasing others or seeking validation. It becomes a response to something deeper, a call from within. And yes, one day you may choose to share your story. But when you do, it won't be for approval. It will be because you lived it fully, and your words will carry real weight, authentic inspiration, not a cry for validation. Jung once said, "What is not made conscious appears in our lives as fate." If you refuse to descend into the basement of your psyche to bring light to what is hidden, you will live repeating the same patterns, not guided by freedom, but by the invisible chains of your shadow. Transformation in silence is also an act of humility. It's the recognition that change takes time, that you will stumble, restart, and try again. And that's not weakness. It's the process. By keeping it private, you give yourself permission to fail and to rise again without the burden of justifying yourself to anyone. So if you truly want to put your life in order, make a silent pact with yourself. Don't announce it. Don't post it. Just begin. Work every day, even if only a little, in the direction of who you want to become. Jung reminded us that the hardest conquest is not of the world, but of the self. While many waste their lives trying to conquer people, status, or possessions, they forget what truly matters: conquering their own inner world. To conquer yourself does not mean suppressing emotions or becoming cold. It means knowing yourself so deeply that you choose your reactions instead of being carried away by them. It means taking the helm of your life instead of being a passenger of a destiny you never chose. And yet, most people live on autopilot, reacting, repeating behaviors they don't even understand. How many times have you said, "I don't know why I acted that way," or "that wasn't what I meant to do"? The truth is, there is a hidden part of you, invisible but active, that drives your choices. That's why before you try to fix your home, improve your relationships, or advance in your career, you must put your inner world in order. You must descend into the depths of your soul and face everything you've repressed, denied, or rejected. And yes, it demands courage. Courage to look in the mirror without filters. Courage to admit you may not be who you thought you were. Courage to recognize there are parts of you you don't like, but that still shape your decisions. When this process begins, everything shifts. You start to see that most external problems have internal roots. Procrastination, for example, often stems not from laziness, but from fear. Fear of failure, or even fear of success. Relationships that always end the same way, often echoes of childhood patterns. Nothing is random, nothing is as simple as it seems. And that's why this journey is so transformative. If you've come this far, I want you to do one thing: stay with me here at Unshakable Mind. Because in this space, we don't chase shallow tips, we dive deep into the psyche, into what truly transforms a human being from the inside out. Take a moment and write down a sentence that seals this silent commitment with yourself. It could be something as simple and profound as, "I choose to change in silence." That short phrase, once spoken or written, becomes a symbol, the very first step toward your own inner transformation. And before we continue, if this message resonates with you, if you feel that something inside of you is stirring right now, I invite you to subscribe to Unshakable Mindset, because together we are going to dive even deeper into this journey of self-discovery. Now let me ask you something personal. Have you ever felt that persistent, nagging sense of inadequacy? As if, no matter how much you achieve, there's always a whisper inside saying, "You're not enough." Many people assume the root of this pain lies outside of them, in an unfulfilling job, in a difficult relationship, or in financial struggles. But after years of listening to countless stories, I can tell you this: the true struggle rarely begins out there. It begins within, in the relationship you have with yourself. When someone would come to me insisting they wanted to change the world around them, I would often guide them toward an unexpected place, their inner world. And almost every time when they dared to step into that inner landscape, something extraordinary happened. Without forcing anything, the outer world began to realign on its own. Life seemed to echo the transformation that had first taken place inside. This journey of conquering yourself has no final destination. It's not about reaching some perfect version of who you are. It's a continuous unfolding, but there are signposts along the way, unmistakable signals that you are moving forward. One of them is when you stop harshly judging yourself and start observing your thoughts and behaviors with curiosity. Another is when you begin to notice your automatic patterns before they take control. And perhaps the most powerful milestone is when you finally gain the ability to choose how to respond instead of blindly reacting. It was here, in this very territory, that I introduced a concept central to my work, one of the most important ideas I believe every human being must face: the shadow. The shadow is everything you are, but refuse to acknowledge. It's the invisible storage room of the psyche, the place where you've hidden aspects of yourself that were rejected, condemned, or labeled unacceptable. From early on, we learn what is praised and what is criticized. If you grew up in a home that celebrated kindness, maybe you learned to bury your natural aggression. If you were raised in a competitive environment, perhaps you rejected your sensitivity. Parents who exalted logic and reason might have unintentionally taught you to suffocate your most authentic emotions. But here is the truth. Nothing you repress ever truly disappears. These denied parts remain alive, pulsing beneath the surface, influencing your choices, shaping your relationships, and sabotaging your efforts without you even realizing it. Have you ever felt an unexplainable irritation toward someone? Have you ever despised traits in another person that logically shouldn't affect your life? I assure you, more often than not, that irritation is nothing but a mirror of your own shadow. The lazy person frustrates the one who never allows themselves to rest. The arrogant individual unsettles the one who has buried their own sense of greatness. The overly sensitive person disturbs those who learned long ago to strangle their emotions. And yet, the shadow is not only made of what we call negative. Hidden within it are also your unexpressed gifts, your dormant talents, your silenced potential. I used to call this the buried gold. Maybe you've always seen yourself as overly rational, while your intuition has been lying dormant, waiting to awaken. Maybe you've defined yourself as rebellious, when in fact there's an untapped well of discipline inside you, longing to be integrated. Maybe you've played the role of the perfect person, while deep inside rests a liberating spontaneity. Working with the shadow does not mean embracing destructive behavior. It means reclaiming the parts of yourself you've lost. It means bringing to light what has been hidden, integrating it with maturity, and ceasing to waste precious psychic energy repressing your natural essence. When this process begins, something remarkable unfolds. We project less onto others. That automatic irritation with certain people starts to fade, because we recognize those same traits within ourselves. Compassion grows for ourselves and for others, as we realize that every human being carries contradictions. The energy once spent on repression is released, like a muscle finally unclenching. And that energy can now fuel creation, love, growth, and authenticity. I used to say, we do not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. That is why the path to a fulfilling life inevitably requires an encounter with your own shadow. One of the most uncomfortable yet liberating revelations is understanding that what you bury inside does not die. On the contrary, it becomes a silent enemy within, capable of sabotaging your greatest opportunities. The psychic energy you use to keep parts of your personality locked away doesn't vanish. It turns inward, against you, weaving patterns of self-sabotage that can feel almost impossible to explain. How many times have you stood before a great opportunity only to mysteriously act in a way that ruined it? How many times have you come close to achieving a goal and suddenly lost motivation or made a careless mistake that destroyed months of effort? How many times have you promised yourself, this time will be different, only to fall into the same cycle again? To me, the explanation is clear. This is repression at work. When you deny essential aspects of who you are, you create a tension between the image you struggle to maintain and your true nature. And that tension must find release. Often it explodes in the form of destructive actions that shatter the very plans you work so hard to build. Think of someone who was taught from childhood that good people never feel anger. This person represses their aggression, puts on the mask of constant kindness, and works tirelessly to be endlessly understanding. But the anger doesn't vanish. It accumulates quietly, deep within. And then, right when they're about to achieve something important, that suppressed energy erupts as a panic attack, a depressive episode, or a sudden destructive behavior that undermines everything. Picture someone who grew up being told never to stand out, never to shine too brightly, because it might upset or disturb others. Now imagine what happens when that person begins to prosper, when opportunities finally arrive. Almost immediately, something deep within pulls them back down. Suddenly, procrastination appears right in the middle of decisive projects, supportive relationships. Collapse without clear explanation. Sometimes even the body rebels, with illnesses, fatigue, or strange symptoms that prevent progress. This is the cost of an unrecognized shadow. It doesn't knock politely at the door. It doesn't fade away with time. It seeps into your life quietly, persistently, and the more you try to bury it, the stronger it becomes. So I want you to pause here and reflect. What situations in your own life might be the result of this repression? What patterns of behavior keep surfacing, almost as if by some invisible hand, sabotaging your own efforts? Write a phrase in the comments that symbolizes your awakening. It could be something as simple as, "I choose to face my shadow." That single line is not just a sentence. It's a silent pact with yourself, a reminder that real transformation begins the moment you dare to look inward. And remember, if this message is stirring something inside you, subscribe now to Unshakable Mindset. Because here we are going to continue exploring, step by step, block by block, the deepest layers of the human mind and the paths that lead to a more authentic life. Now let me ask you, have you noticed how ingenious the human mind can be when it comes to pushing us away from what we most desire? It's as if there's a secret artist inside of us, but this artist specializes in the art of sabotage. This inner artist paints invisible portraits of psychosomatic illnesses that suddenly appear at the most crucial moments. It arranges repeated accidents right on the eve of major decisions. It scripts storylines in which our relationships seem destined to end in the same painful and destructive way, again and again. Most of the time, we don't recognize this inner saboteur. It's easier to say we had bad luck, that circumstances were against us, or that other people failed us. But the harder and far more liberating truth is that something hidden deep within us often works directly against our conscious goals. Take procrastination as an example. Many call it laziness, but is it really laziness? From what I've observed, chronic procrastination rarely has anything to do with laziness. More often it is fear, fear of being seen, fear of failure, and paradoxically, even fear of success, because success demands that we leave the comfort zone, and that exposure can feel unbearable. Perfectionism is another mask. On the surface, it can look like discipline, like striving for excellence, but beneath it, there almost always lies an old wound, the belief that nothing you do will ever be good enough. How many of you carry this wound? How many of you have abandoned projects, not because you weren't capable, but because you convinced yourself you would fail before you even began? These buried wounds take countless forms. They wear the masks of addictions that keep returning, resentments that never seem to heal, and toxic relationship patterns that repeat as if scripted by some invisible writer. All of these cycles are born from parts of us that were denied, repressed, or silenced, and now cry out for recognition. The way out is not to fight harder against these patterns. In fact, the harder we try to suppress them, the stronger they become in the shadows. The real solution lies in what I once described as making the unconscious conscious. It is about identifying these rejected parts, inviting them into dialogue, and uncovering the truths they have been trying to reveal all along. But let me be clear. Working with the shadow is not about unleashing every repressed impulse without boundaries, as though repression itself was the only problem. Integration does not mean chaos. Integration means recognition, understanding and learning how to channel these energies into their most mature forms. It's about becoming an internal diplomat, someone who can negotiate peace between the many voices within without letting any one of them dominate destructively. Take repressed aggression as an example. When denied, it manifests as resentment, illness, or self-sabotage. But when integrated, aggression reveals itself as a vital force, the energy of protection, the power of self-assertion. You learn to use it to establish firm boundaries, to defend what you believe in, to bring strength and determination into your projects. The very energy that once acted as your enemy now becomes your ally. Or consider the desire for recognition. Many dismiss it as vanity, as if wanting to be seen and valued was somehow shameful. They spend their lives hiding behind false modesty, and in doing so, they wound their own self-esteem. But when we accept that the need to be acknowledged is a legitimate part of being human, something shifts. That energy transforms into motivation to share our best selves with the world. You begin to care for your appearance without guilt. You allow yourself to feel real pride in your accomplishments. You accept compliments without shrinking into discomfort. Instead of hiding your light, you let it shine. When we embrace what we once rejected, we do not become worse. We become whole. We gain authenticity. And paradoxically, we also become more ethical, because we are no longer wasting energy in an endless war against ourselves. That reclaimed energy is now free to be directed consciously and productively. This process gives birth to what I called natural authority. When you integrate your shadow, you develop a quiet strength, a calm presence that radiates confidence. Others sense it, even if they cannot explain why. They feel you are trustworthy, someone solid, someone real. It's a confidence that doesn't need to boast, because it emerges naturally from reconciliation with yourself. At the same time, this integration awakens what I described as the transcendent function, the ability to hold opposites within you. You discover that you can be rational and intuitive, firm and compassionate, humble and confident. You no longer have to choose between extremes. You become someone capable of living life's paradoxes with maturity. The path of integration usually unfolds in 4 stages. First comes recognition, the courage to admit that a particular trait is indeed part of you. Then comes acceptance, the willingness to stop running from it. The second stage of integration is acceptance, learning not to punish yourself for having these traits, but to acknowledge that they exist. Next comes understanding, discovering what purpose this energy can serve when channeled positively. And finally, mature expression, finding constructive ways to put that energy into practice. This, in essence, is the process of individuation, becoming who you truly are, Instead of living as a shadow of what the world expects you to be, I often said, everything that irritates us in others can lead us to a deeper understanding of ourselves. This is why one of the most powerful tools for integrating the shadow is to observe our projections. Whenever someone provokes an intense irritation in you, pause and ask yourself, what exactly about this person bothers me? And where does that very same trait live inside of me? Even if it's hidden, even if I refuse to admit it. The question is uncomfortable, yes, but it is also deeply revealing. The falseness you condemn in another may reflect the dishonesty you secretly deny in yourself. The laziness you criticize so harshly in someone else may simply be the echo of your own unacknowledged desire to rest, repressed by the constant demand to be productive. Do you see? The external world is a mirror. Every irritation, every fascination, every judgment is a chance to dive deeper into your own psyche. So I invite you now to reflect. What trait in others bothers you the most, and what might that reveal about yourself? If this resonates with you, write in the comments, I choose to integrate my shadow. That single phrase can be the very first step in your journey. And don't forget, if you want to keep walking this path of self-discovery, subscribe now to Unshakable Mind. Here, together, we will continue to explore the mysteries of the psyche, so that you can become more whole, more conscious, and more free. When we decide to face our shadow, we need instruments, not weapons, not defenses, but tools of awareness. One of the most powerful practices is deceptively simple: writing about yourself. Set aside a few minutes each day to write down the moments when you felt irritated, when you noticed dishonesty in yourself or others, when a repressed impulse surfaced, or when you judged an emotion as inappropriate. But write not to punish yourself. Write as a scientist would, documenting a rare phenomenon. For example, today I felt angry when someone interrupted me during a meeting. Then ask, why did this bother me so much? Could it be that there's a part of me that also wishes to interrupt more, to assert myself, but that stays silent out of excessive politeness? It is in this kind of investigation that we begin to see what we condemn in others is often the reflection of what we have denied in ourselves. Writing is not a confessional, it is a mirror. Another technique I used in my research is called amplification. When you identify a recurring emotional pattern, do not ignore it, amplify it, explore it fully. Ask, when did this begin? What triggers awaken it? How does it show up in my body? What old memories does it bring to the surface? This kind of inquiry uncovers hidden layers that the conscious mind insists on sweeping under the rug. There is also the practice of letting the mind wander without direction, what I called active imagination, or the observation of waking dreams. Close your eyes, allow images to emerge spontaneously. Fantasies and symbols rise from the depths, and these are not meaningless daydreams. They are messages from the unconscious. Even so-called slips of the tongue are meaningful. The word that escapes by accident, the name you keep forgetting, the mistake that repeats itself, none of these are random. They are cracks in the wall of consciousness, tiny openings through which the unconscious slips its signals. But one of the most essential practices is inner dialogue. When you notice a repressed aspect, like anger, don't push it away in disgust. Instead, talk to it. Ask, what do you want to show me? What are you trying to protect me from? How can I use your strength without becoming destructive? This simple act can transform what once felt like an enemy into a possible ally. The secret is to suspend judgment. You are not observing yourself in order to fix yourself instantly, but to know yourself deeply. I always said, what remains unconscious governs us without our awareness. We can only change what we first bring into the light of consciousness. This work is patient, almost artisanal. It is like the craft of an archaeologist, brushing away layer after layer of sediment to uncover an ancient treasure. And as we cultivate this self-observation, something extraordinary begins to happen. Choices appear where before there were only automatic reactions, and it is here that dreams enter the picture. I called them the royal road to the unconscious. Dreams are the symbolic language through which the deeper psyche communicates. To ignore them is like having a wise teacher whispering guidance into your ear every night, and choosing not to listen. Unlike the linear logic of waking life, dreams speak in metaphors, associations, and images that escape the rules of time and causality. Dreaming that you are flying rarely refers to literal flight. More often, it symbolizes the longing to break free from a situation that imprisons you, or the need to transcend an inner limitation. Dreaming that you are lost is not just about nameless streets. It may reflect the confusion and lack of direction in your waking life. I notice that dreams often compensate for our conscious attitudes. If during the day you are excessively rational, at night emotional and chaotic images will surface. If you are too submissive, you may dream of being aggressive or assertive. The unconscious seeks balance, constantly correcting the excesses of the persona you wear in the world. This is why I recommend keeping a dream journal. Place a notebook by your bedside. Upon waking, write down everything you remember, even vague fragments. Dreams vanish quickly, like mist under the morning sun. Recording them immediately is essential. Over time, your memory strengthens, and the unconscious begins to speak more clearly because it perceives. When you record your dreams, don't just write the events. Write the colors, the emotions, the atmosphere. Often the feeling tone of a dream reveals far more than the storyline itself. And when it comes to interpretation, I always avoided universal dictionaries of symbols. A snake, for example, may mean danger for one person, fascination for another, or even renewal for someone else. What matters is not what the symbol means in a book, but what it awakens in you, in your unique story. I also noticed that dreams can anticipate future developments, not as literal predictions, but as glimpses of the direction your psyche is moving toward. Recurrent dreams, in particular, signal urgent matters that remain unresolved. And even nightmares, as frightening as they may seem, carry vital messages. The monster chasing you might simply be a rejected part of yourself, begging to be acknowledged. A powerful practice is to engage in dialogue with dream characters. Choose a figure from your dream, whether a person, an animal, or even an object. In your imagination, ask, who are you? What do you represent? What are you trying to show me? Profound revelations often emerge from this interaction. It is no coincidence that countless artists, scientists, and creators throughout history received entire solutions to their challenges through dreams. I myself often recommended that, when faced with a dilemma, you could ask your unconscious for guidance before sleep. When respected, the unconscious responds. But this dialogue between the inner and outer world extends beyond dreams. It also reveals itself through the phenomenon I called synchronicity, meaningful coincidences that point to an underlying order, a mysterious link between psyche and world. We'll explore that more deeply in the next stage. For now, I'd like to leave you with something practical. Write in the comments the phrase, "I choose to listen to my dreams." This simple declaration is symbolic, but it opens an inner door. And if this journey is touching your life, don't forget to subscribe here to Mentalidade Inabalável. That way, we can continue exploring together the mysteries of the mind and the human heart. There are moments in life when coincidences seem to disobey the logic of chance. External events align so precisely with what we feel inside that ignoring them becomes impossible. You think about changing careers, and that same day you hear a song about new beginnings. Hours later, you stumble across an article about professional transitions. And, as if on cue, a friend you haven't spoken to in years calls to say they've just made the exact decision you were considering. To many, this seems like nothing more than luck or common coincidence. But I, Carl Gustav Jung, saw in such events something greater, a profound alignment between the unconscious and the external world. That is why I gave this phenomenon its name, synchronicity. Synchronicity tends to appear most often during times of change, when you've touched your inner truth but still hesitate to take the next step. It is as though, sensing the difficulty of reaching you directly, the unconscious organizes the outer world into signs that confirm the path you need to take. The deeper you go into self-knowledge, the more you realize that the boundary between inner and outer isn't nearly as rigid as we were taught. This is not magical thinking, it's expanded sensitivity. It is the ability to notice patterns that have always been present, but until now remained invisible. I called this attitude floating attention. It's a state of alertness without rigidity, a soft, open gaze able to catch subtle connections between inner states and external events. It's like when you learn a new word and suddenly begin hearing it everywhere. The word was always there. It's your perception that expanded. One practical way to cultivate this is by keeping a synchronicity journal. Write down every coincidence that catches your attention, even those that seem trivial at the time. With patience, patterns begin to emerge. You may notice that certain types of synchronicities precede important changes in your life, or that they intensify whenever you are more aligned with your inner truth. But here's an important distinction. Synchronicity is not superstition. Not every coincidence carries profound meaning. The difference lies in the inner resonance. A genuine synchronicity strikes you almost physically, as if it touched an invisible string deep within. It brings an undeniable sense of confirmation. These experiences can show up in many ways. A chance meeting with someone who provides the exact information or support you need. A casual conversation that suddenly clarifies a long-standing question. A book that arrives in your hands precisely when you were ready for its message. To me, these were signs of an organizing intelligence woven into the fabric of life. Not necessarily something supernatural, but a profound link between psyche and reality that a purely materialistic worldview cannot fully explain. When you begin to notice synchronicities, your relationship with life changes. You stop feeling as though you're walking alone and begin to sense that something greater is moving alongside your efforts. This doesn't mean becoming passive or waiting for signs to decide for you. On the contrary, it means acting from your inner truth while staying open to confirmations and redirections that may arise. It is a delicate balance between personal initiative and openness to mystery, and often synchronicities emerge precisely to affirm that you are on the right path, even when that path seems irrational or risky to the logical mind. It is as if the collective unconscious itself mobilizes to support those who dare to live according to their true vocation. The legacy I left, and which I echo again here, is simple yet profound. Synchronicity reminds us that we are not isolated fragments adrift in a random universe. We are threads in a tapestry so vast and intricate that at times it reveals its hidden patterns through the dance of chance. Organizing your life does not simply mean arranging drawers or creating flawless routines. It means making peace with who you truly are, including the parts of yourself you once tried to hide. This path is not easy, but it is authentic. It offers no shortcuts, but instead a transformation rooted in truth. It is not about becoming a better version of yourself. It is about rediscovering the one you have always been, before the masks, before the expectations the world placed upon you. Real courage is not about displaying only virtues. It is about embracing contradictions and finding strength in your wholeness. When you stop fighting against yourself, you release an energy that was once imprisoned. And with that energy comes clarity, presence, and the power to act. You don't need perfection to begin. You don't need all the answers, nor anyone's validation. What you need is honesty with yourself, and the willingness to look within. The silence I've spoken about is not a hiding place. It is the fertile ground where truth matures before it blooms into the world. If these words stir something inside you, if you recognize patterns you've been living, if you sense a more authentic version of yourself waiting to emerge, then the time is now. Do not wait for Monday. Do not wait for the next year. Begin today. Take a notebook. Write down one irritation you felt today and ask yourself, what shadow does this reveal? Before sleep, pay attention to your dreams. In the coming days, notice the coincidences that appear, and if something resonates, declare it in the comments. I trust the signs of life. By doing this, you are not only declaring it to the world, you are declaring it to yourself. You are saying, I'm ready for this journey of deep transformation, because the greatest changes do not happen in the spotlight of the world, but in the silent territories of the soul. Share this message with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment about the insight that touched you most. And if you wish to continue this journey of self-knowledge through the wisdom of Jung, subscribe now to the channel Unshakable Mindset. True transformation begins when you stop pretending to be what you are not. The world does not need your masked version. It needs your naked essence, the part of you that emerges when you finally decide to stop hiding from yourself. At first, this change seems almost invisible. There are no fireworks, no grand announcements, no external revolutions. Instead, there is a continuous underground movement, like roots deepening into the earth. Before any sprout breaks through the surface, Jung understood this hidden phase as vital, just as a seed must germinate in darkness before becoming a tree. The human being must reorganize inner life before sustaining lasting change in the external world. And in this process, moments of discomfort will arise. Layers of conditioning begin to fall away, and the mind feels as if it is losing ground. Even harmful patterns can feel familiar, and abandoning them may seem terrifying, like letting go of a rotten plank while adrift at sea. Fragile as it is, it felt like it was keeping you afloat. This is where persistence becomes essential. Jung said there is no growth without tension between who we were and who we are becoming. That tension, when endured with patience, molds the new inner structure. It is the friction between the old and the new that shapes true transformation. Another powerful aspect of this journey is the relationship between shadow and creativity. The same energies we repress, once integrated, reveal immense creative potential. Suppressed anger can transform into courage to defend ideas. Chronic sadness can blossom into artistic sensitivity. Even the desire for recognition can turn into inspiration to create something that uplifts and impacts the lives of others. By integrating the shadow, we unlock resources that were dormant, waiting for permission to come alive. And then the outer life begins to reflect these inner changes in subtle ways, different choices, more honest conversations, decisions that nurture genuine well-being instead of the appearance of success. People who once consumed your emotional space begin to drift away naturally, while new aligned connections appear almost effortlessly. It is as if your inner field begins to broadcast a new frequency, attracting experiences coherent with this vibration. This is what Jung called individuation. It does not mean isolation. It means developing a mature relationship with the world. When you stop living to please or to meet external expectations, you begin to relate to others more truthfully. Conflicts still exist, but now you have the strength to face them without losing integrity. At this point, a natural authority emerges, not as force, but as a stable presence that inspires trust. The work with dreams and synchronicities deepens this experience. You start noticing recurring symbols, an animal that keeps showing up, perhaps representing a hidden strength within you, or a recurring setting symbolizing an area of life still in need of transformation. At the same time, synchronicities become like a dialogue with reality. A book arrives at the exact moment you need its wisdom. A casual phrase answers a question you've been carrying silently. A simple conversation suddenly brings unexpected clarity. This way of living requires a constant practice of inner listening. Instead of reacting automatically, you learn to pause. The pause is sacred. It is the space where you consciously choose the direction of your energy. Jung said, true freedom does not lie in acting on impulse, but in choosing with awareness. Each time you interrupt an old pattern and respond from a place of alignment, you strengthen the new inner structure that is being born. And the impact of this process extends far beyond the individual. Those who integrate their shadow and embrace their own complexity become. Those who integrate their inner shadow often become silent agents of change in any environment they enter. Their very presence begins to break collective cycles of reactivity, judgment, and unconscious repetition. Without the need for speeches, persuasion, or preaching, they embody through their own lives the possibility that another way of being is real. This quiet influence, subtle yet undeniable, becomes one of the most powerful forces of social transformation. Carl Jung believed that collective healing begins with the individual who becomes whole. Silence, far from being passivity or weakness, is actually the fertile soil for the most authentic form of action, the kind that arises from within and sustains itself throughout a lifetime. When inner integrity becomes solid, life ceases to be mere survival and transforms into full expression. And here is the invitation. Before you go to sleep tonight, observe your dreams. Upon waking, write them down. Throughout the day, notice the small coincidences, those moments when life seems to whisper directly to you. Ask yourself, what is life trying to show me right now? If these words awakened something within you, I invite you to leave a comment below. My silent transformation has already begun, and remember to subscribe to the channel Unshakable Mindset to continue deepening this journey. There comes a point when life no longer feels like a sequence of random tasks or endless responsibilities. It becomes a dialogue between the conscious self and the unconscious depths. Every challenge, every encounter, every coincidence becomes an opportunity to expand our understanding of who we are and the world around us. In this state, there is no desperate search for signs or answers. They arise naturally, in harmony with the rhythm of the path, because we are already aligned with our deepest truth. As the individuation process unfolds, it becomes inevitable to confront the role culture and environment play in shaping our shadows. From an early age, we absorb spoken and unspoken messages about what is acceptable and what is forbidden. We shape our behavior to be loved, valued, and included. While this adaptation helps us survive socially, it often comes at a cost, the loss of connection with authentic parts of ourselves. Reclaiming those parts does not mean rejecting society. It means learning how to participate in it without sacrificing our integrity. This realization leads to an essential understanding. Many of our internal conflicts are not entirely personal. They echo collective dilemmas. For example, repressed aggression may reflect not only a family dynamic, but also a culture that devalues assertiveness in certain groups. Suppressed sensitivity may stem not only from individual experiences, but from a broader system that idolizes rationality while discrediting emotional expression. Recognizing these influences shows us that shadow work is not only an individual act, it is also a silent cultural transformation. Every person who becomes whole helps break collective patterns. This perspective deepens even more when we look at archetypes. More than inner images, archetypes are living forces that run through generations, revealing themselves in myths, stories, and symbols. The hero, the sage, the rebel, the caregiver, the destroyer, all of them live within us in different measures. Integrating the shadow means allowing these archetypes to find balance without letting any one of them dominate our entire existence. Too much of the hero leads to exhaustion and pride. Too much of the caregiver leads to self-erasure. Too much of the rebel prevents the creation of stability. Symbolic narratives, whether ancient myths, fairy tales, or modern stories, become powerful tools of self-knowledge. When we recognize ourselves in a character, we notice nuances of our own psyche that previously went unseen. Jung observed that stories that last for centuries remain alive because they touch universal structures of the human experience. Reading, listening, or watching these stories with symbolic awareness is like holding up a mirror to the soul. This exploration does not have to be limited to great works of literature. A painting that unsettles us, a song that awakens nostalgia, or a movie that unexpectedly moves us to tears. Each can be a portal to hidden dimensions of our being. The key is to ask, what exactly is stirring inside me? What memory, desire, or fear is being touched? These questions are not meant to deliver final answers, but to deepen the dialogue with the unconscious. And the body, in this process, becomes an indispensable ally. Our posture, muscular tension, breathing patterns, and physiological reactions all serve as mirrors of our inner state. Shadow integration benefits immensely from practices that increase bodily awareness, mindful walking, free movement, deep breathing. What was once only intellectual begins to be embodied, becoming living experience. Another essential dimension is our relationship with time. The accelerated rhythm imposed by modern life often suffocates the natural rhythms of the psyche. Jung understood that profound processes have their own pace, and forcing them is like Trying to open a flower bud before it is ready, the result is always the loss of what could have blossomed in fullness. To respect our inner timing, even when the world demands urgency and instant results, is an act of resistance and deep self-care. This also changes the way we view so-called setbacks. Moments of stagnation, slips into old patterns, or periods of confusion are not failures. They are natural parts of the cycle of growth. The psyche, like nature, moves in spirals, revisiting themes, deepening insights, and returning to old points with new perspectives. Recognizing this protects us from the trap of harsh self-criticism and strengthens us with the patience needed to sustain lasting transformation. With practice, we learn to turn daily life into a true laboratory of self-discovery. Ordinary conversations, small frustrations, repetitive tasks, everything can serve as a mirror for the soul. The transformative question is simple. What does this awaken in me? Each moment of awareness is an opportunity to move one step deeper into the mystery of who we really are. As the process of individuation unfolds, something subtle begins to take place. What once seemed divided, internal life and external life, starts to intertwine almost imperceptibly. The boundaries between the world you carry inside and the world around you are no longer rigid. Every gesture, every automatic reaction, every encounter becomes a mirror, revealing aspects that were often hidden in the shadows of the unconscious. This movement dissolves the old separation between inner work and practical life. Transformation is no longer confined to hours of introspection. It begins to permeate every corner of existence. Life itself becomes a silent, continuous, inevitably transformative spiritual practice. You realize that you don't need to withdraw from the world to deepen your self-understanding. On the contrary, everyday life becomes the stage where your unconscious expresses itself while simultaneously being illuminated by your conscious awareness. From this integration emerges a precious sensation, coherence. It is not about having definitive answers, but about feeling an invisible thread connecting choices, experiences, and lessons. This coherence does not arise artificially. It emerges as a natural consequence of constant internal listening. To maintain it requires a humble yet revolutionary gesture, adjusting your course whenever life shows that it is necessary. No longer living to satisfy external expectations, but to honor your own truth. This alignment brings the courage to take unconventional paths. At this stage, individuation is no longer a distant theoretical goal. It becomes a way of being in the world. It means participating fully in life without losing your internal compass, opening yourself to the new without abandoning your roots, and navigating inevitable uncertainties without being consumed by them. It is like dancing with your own shadow, not to eliminate it, but to recognize its presence and extract creative energy from it. Over time, this integration produces an even deeper transformation. It is not only a reconciliation with aspects of the psyche, but also a profound repositioning toward life itself. Priorities silently reorder themselves. What once seemed urgent loses its weight, and what has long been postponed suddenly takes center stage. This shift is not the result of a single rational decision, but an organic maturation in which thought, emotion, and instinct stop competing with each other and begin moving in unison. In this maturation, mistakes take on a new meaning. The fear of failure, which often paralyzed decisions, gradually gives way to genuine curiosity. What can I learn from this? Identity no longer needs to rely on the illusion of perfection. Life reveals itself through successes and failures alike. This broader perspective frees you from the anxiety of meeting unattainable standards and allows you to act with greater freedom and authenticity. At this point, dialogue with the unconscious extends beyond dreams, meditations, or deep reflection. It begins to infiltrate subtle moments, a phrase heard by chance that resonates within, an old memory that surfaces for no apparent reason, a different route home that suddenly feels significant. Life is no longer divided into moments of consciousness and distraction. Everything merges into a single continuous experience, filled with signs, symbols, and subtle answers. Relationships undergo a silent purification as well. Interacting with those who respect mutual growth becomes essential. There is no desire to remain in environments where old patterns repeat unconsciously. Instead, the aim is to be with people who expand your horizons, even if they think differently. Individuation is not about surrounding yourself with clones. It is about sustaining your identity in the presence of diversity without losing yourself. Attentive listening and authentic dialogue replace the need to always be right. At this stage, creativity flourishes naturally, not only as artistic expression, but as a way of responding to life. A simple gesture of affection, a conversation transformed into reconciliation, a new method of organizing daily life. Each mundane choice can become a creative act when it arises from inner freedom gained through reconciling with your shadow. As this freedom matures, something even deeper emerges, a sense of belonging. The feeling of isolation, disconnection, or separateness from the whole begins to dissolve. You realize that every experience, no matter how trivial it seems, is part of a vast and mysterious fabric. Your choices reverberate far beyond what you imagine. This awareness awakens a quiet responsibility to live coherently, not only for yourself, but for the impact each action has on the collective field. Symbols gain practical life. Those that once appeared only in dreams or moments of meaningful coincidence become consciously incorporated into daily life. Objects with personal significance, images that recall inner truths, small personal rituals, all serve as anchors amid life's turbulence. For me, symbols are doors that keep the dialogue with the unconscious alive and fertile. The more vivid they become, the deeper life itself feels. Finally, the understanding of impermanence deepens. You recognize that everything, emotions, roles, relationships, even identity itself, is in constant motion. This perception softens resistance to change. You learn to welcome both the beginning and the end of each cycle. And in this welcome arises a profound peace, not dependent on control, but on trust in life's flow. This is a high point in the journey of individuation. Living ceases to be a struggle against change and becomes a conscious dance with it, a dance that requires presence, courage, and above all, authenticity. And now I want you to write in the comments which insight or realization from this block resonated most deeply with you. Write in the comments about the most silent and genuine transformation you have ever experienced. Write it like this: my deepest change was born in silence. I want to see you acknowledging this truth here. And remember, if this content resonates with you, subscribe to the Unshakable Mindset channel, turn on notifications, and share this message. The more people awaken to this living dialogue with life, the more collective consciousness will be generated. As we advance in the journey of individuation, a silent serenity emerges. Accepting impermanence does not mean passivity, it means full presence in the moment, the awareness that nothing needs to be desperately clutched to hold value. Even the notion of success transforms, no longer relying solely on external achievements, but incorporating internal metrics. The ability to maintain integrity under pressure, nurture authentic relationships, and face challenges without losing balance. These forms of success are quiet and rarely celebrated publicly, yet they carry real and lasting weight because they are rooted in something beyond external validation. As integration deepens, our relationship with the future also shifts. Goals cease to be rigid projections and instead become flexible directions, open to adjustments as new elements arise. This stance reduces attachment to specific outcomes and enhances trust in the process. At the same time, attention to the present intensifies because true transformation occurs here. The future stops being a distant horizon and becomes the organic continuation of what is being built now, in the silence and consistency of small daily actions. At the heart of this phase is a profound understanding. The journey is not about reaching a definitive state of completion, but about living consciously within the infinite process of becoming. Every step, every encounter, every challenge becomes part of a continuous dance between who we already are and who we are becoming. The beauty of this movement lies precisely in its perpetual nature, in the eternal character of self-transformation. At an advanced stage of individuation, self-perception expands beyond the personal conscious or unconscious, encompassing participation in the larger story of humanity. The realization emerges that each individual carries not only personal memories but also ancestral experiences. Jung described this as the collective unconscious, a reservoir of images, patterns, and archetypes that repeat across generations. Recognizing this heritage transforms self-knowledge into an act of reconnection with a symbolic lineage that transcends time. At this point, internal work expands to include identifying personal myths that shape decisions and perceptions, often unconsciously. Some live the hero myth, constantly battling. Others follow the narrative of the restless seeker. And some see themselves in the role of the healer, forgetting themselves along the way. Bringing these myths into consciousness allows us to decide whether they still serve our current life purpose or need to be transformed to make space for new narratives. The relationship with historical time also shifts. Recognizing that certain individual struggles reflect collective movements, we gain a broader perspective on our role in the world. Seemingly personal conflicts, difficulty expressing opinions or handling criticism, may echo cultural patterns rooted in previous generations. Individual transformation thus becomes part of a wider movement. Every person who breaks a cycle weakens the hold of that pattern on the collective. At this level, working with the shadow extends beyond individual traits to include cultural aspects, biases, inequalities, and dominant narratives, understanding that they too carry collective shadow content. Integration therefore involves not only internal recognition, but also coherent external actions capable of fostering more conscious and balanced environments. Deep contact with the collective unconscious awakens sensitivity to universal symbols. Water, mountains, fire, animals, mythical figures. These elements frequently appear in dreams and meaningful coincidences, carrying significance that transcends cultures. Interpreting these symbols personally and contextually provides guidance that comes not from external advice, but from a direct dialogue with the structuring forces of the psyche. Personal rituals gain renewed value. These are not complex ceremonies or tied to religious traditions, but conscious gestures connecting the inner and outer worlds. lighting a candle before starting a project, writing letters to parts of yourself being integrated, walking silently at dawn while reflecting on important decisions. Each act becomes a bridge between inner and outer realities. There is also a shift in how we relate to natural cycles. Observing the seasons, the phases of the moon, daily rhythms, and even the tides becomes a reminder that everything in life flows. This awareness cultivates patience, adjusts expectations, and helps us accept the natural pace of transformation. Understanding that emotions, roles, and bonds are in constant motion reduces resistance to change and allows us to embrace both beginnings and endings with greater serenity. The central point is that true transformation manifests in the integration of presence, action, and symbolic awareness. Every gesture, every decision, every daily experience becomes an opportunity to align inner and outer worlds. From this alignment emerges genuine freedom, the freedom to live according to your own truth, in harmony with the flow of life and the collective legacy we inherit. Now, I invite you to reflect. What signals from your collective unconscious or personal symbolic universe are asking for your attention today? Reflect on the synchronicities that have appeared in your life. Which repeated symbols, dreams, or coincidences capture your attention? Share your insights in the comments. Share this reflection with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to continue this journey of self-discovery. The silent transformation Jung taught us is profound, continuous, and uniquely personal. It is not about appearing to the world, but about emerging for oneself, creating a life that is coherent, authentic, and connected to something greater than ourselves. Jung's quiet journey of self-knowledge teaches us that periods of apparent inactivity are just as valuable as moments of expansion. Learning to honor times of retreat as well as times of growth is not just a metaphor, but a living principle guiding conscious choices. There are seasons for planting, for growth, for harvest, and for rest, and recognizing these cycles is part of psychic integration. Over time, the ability to hold paradoxes without needing immediate resolution develops. Jung called this the transcendent function, the capacity to sustain opposites and simultaneous experiences. It is to feel sadness and gratitude at the same time, to recognize your own strength while admitting vulnerability, to plan for the future without losing presence in the now. Coexisting with opposites stops generating constant anxiety and becomes a source of depth and balance. Identity becomes more flexible. Rather than rigidly clinging to labels or fixed roles, we gain the freedom to move between different aspects of personality as circumstances demand. This does not mean inauthenticity. It means expressing diverse parts of oneself without feeling like we are betraying an idealized version created to please others. This flexibility reduces internal conflict and strengthens authenticity in relationships. As integration deepens, the need for external validation diminishes. Actions are guided by an inner sense of coherence rather than others' expectations. This emotional independence does not isolate. On the contrary, it allows for truer connections based on mutual choice and conscious sharing of life paths. The impact of this inner state on everyday life is profound. Small, consistent changes create a solid foundation to navigate unforeseen events, losses, and transformations. Life continues to present challenges, but the way we face them becomes centered, conscious, and less reactive. At this point, the journey is no longer only internal. It naturally manifests in every gesture, word, and decision, radiating balance and presence outward. perception of growth also changes. It is no longer a race to accumulate skills or reach external milestones, but a continuous refinement of presence. Being fully present becomes more important than accumulating experiences for quantity. This refined attention allows us to notice previously invisible nuances. A tone of voice that reveals the unsaid, a body language that signals emotional states, a silence heavier than words. By quieting inner noise, we perceive the subtle texture connecting all things. The concept of purpose expands. It is no longer a fixed goal, but a dynamic force, constantly updating. It manifests in daily choices, in how we live the present, not only in major achievements. This understanding frees us from the pressure of finding one big answer and opens space to explore, experiment, and adapt. Our relationship with emotions transforms. We no longer seek to avoid them at all costs, but understand them as messengers carrying valuable information. Anger signals violated boundaries. Sadness indicates a need for retreat. Anxiety warns of too much focus on the future, invading the present. Listening to these messages without fully identifying with them allows conscious responses instead of automatic reactions. The body regains a central role. It becomes not only a vehicle for experience, but a sensitive radar, instantly signaling when something is out of alignment. Short breaths indicate tension, deep relaxation signals acceptance and safety. This perception arises from the consistent practice of inhabiting one's own body, making it an indispensable ally in dialogue with the unconscious. Our relationship with the past also transforms. Memories that once triggered pain or resistance can now be revisited in a new light. Instead of trying to rewrite what happened, we integrate these experiences as essential parts of our path. This is not about romanticizing wounds, but recognizing that they shape the strength, sensitivity, and wisdom we carry today. Reconciliation. With the past, with all its imperfections, frees energy previously trapped in regret or fantasies about how things should have been. The future, in turn, stops being a territory of pure uncertainty and anxiety and becomes an open field of possibilities. This shift does not eliminate the unknown, but changes how we relate to it. The focus moves toward internal preparation for any scenario, cultivating clarity, adaptability, and resilience to face what comes, rather than attempting to control every detail. Another aspect of this phase is strengthening our relationship with silence. Silence is no longer merely the absence of sound. It becomes fertile ground where thoughts settle, emotions calm, and insights emerge with clarity. Silence stops being an escape and becomes nourishment. Moments of solitude gain strategic value, allowing internal forces to reorganize before returning to action in the world. Over time, it becomes clear that this process is not linear. There will be days of clarity and days of confusion, moments of openness and moments of withdrawal. The difference is that these fluctuations no longer cause despair. They are accepted as a natural part of the psyche's cycles. This understanding allows us to navigate periods of shadow with serenity, recognizing that they play an essential role in integration. Finally, a deep sense of trust emerges. This is not the naive belief that everything will always go as desired, but a mature confidence that it is possible to face any experience while maintaining one's integrity. This security is grounded in lived experience. You have already faced internal and external challenges and found ways to move forward. It is the silent trust of someone who knows their own strength, not in theory but through experience. This phase is not marked by grand explosions or noisy achievements. It manifests in conscious solitude and simple gestures, listening to someone without haste, caring for your internal space, saying yes or no with clarity, without guilt. The journey ceases to be only about finding answers and becomes, above all, about living the questions with presence and courage. Thank you for staying until here, immersing yourself in this deep reflection. May every word, every image, every insight that resonated along this path serve as a thread of light in your own journey of self-discovery. Remember, true transformation occurs in silence, but it blooms in the world when you decide to live with integrity and authenticity. If this content touched something within you, subscribe to continue following this journey. There is much more to explore, symbols to decipher, shadows to integrate, and conversations that can illuminate forgotten parts of who we are. Return whenever you need a space to breathe, reflect, and reconnect. Every return here is, above all, a reunion with yourself.